Hey there guys, what's up? Well, I apologize for you being staring into the sun. This is just where this car ended up being parked at. But I have spent the day today putting this Valiant back together, and that just entailed putting the manifolds and everything back on it. This is actually a different manifold and carburetor and all that was on it, because the one that I had on here was the one that I had repaired, and it turned out that it still had an issue down at the collector down there, that it still leaked. And so I came into, thanks to a buddy of mine that was generous enough to bring me another slant 6, I came into possession of another intake that an exhaust that seemed like it's in better shape, and it has a different kind of carburetor on it than I normally use. This is one of these Holley 1920s, and I don't particularly care for these, but this one looks like a recent remanufactured carburetor, so I think it's worth trying to use it. So we'll see what happens with it. Now, it's kind of funny about this. Let me just tell you a little backstory on carburetors on these old cars, the slant 6s. I know people will say, I had one with this carb, I had one with that carb, but most of the time through the 60s they sort of interchanged. They had a Carter BBS one barrel, and then they had a Holley 1920 like that one, and they sort of interchanged them, but they normally use the 1920 version, which is a slightly, it's always one size only, I believe, the Venturi size, so they normally used it on the 225 exclusively, and then there may have been one on a 170 or whatever, but I don't think so. And the 170 normally used a Carter BBS, and so, you know, like I said, they're interchangeable, but if you look down through the application guides for each year, you'll see how they used them. And so either or really is what they came with through model year. I think they used the BBS on trucks through like 70 or 71, maybe a little bit later, but they stopped using them in cars about 1968 or 9 or so, something in that range. And so I soldiered on with these 1920s through 73, and then after 73 the slant 6 one barrel went to a Holley 1945 one barrel, which is a different design totally. I think it's a lot better carburetor, but either way, you know, that's essentially what you have to deal with. And there might be a oddball here and there. There might have been I don't know if they used a one barrel Stromberg on these or not. I don't think they did. I think that was a 318 thing. But anyway, so I put this all back together, and I filled it up with coolant and put some gas in it, and I hope the battery's still got a charge in it. I'm still dealing with this stupid throttle linkage for the transmission down here. This car had, just to make this kind of concise, that thing that's laying there connects to that right there, and then that connects up to the carburetor, so it transmits motion from the accelerator pedal to the transmission. And they used one design through about 1969, and then they used a second design from 1970 through 73 or so, and then they used a third design through 74 on up. So that you're not supposed to try to swap different pieces to different years. It all has to work together. It's the one thing about Mopars I can't stand, but that's the way it is. So this setup here appears to be that red part right there, that bracket and all that, and that linkage appears to be the original 1968 on down, 9 on down stuff. That's a 71 manifold, but it was in a 67 car, so somebody's done some swapping anyway. But this one had this kind of slider looking end on this rod here. This is not the right rod for this car. This is a 71, 70 or whatever on up through 73 style. It has that slot in it, and so that's not what's supposed to be on here, and it will not function properly with that solid rod right there, that thing going up, not the accelerator cable, but that rod that's connected. That's supposed to be, for that type of, that thing is supposed to be, comes down, attaches like that one up there does, and then it comes down, and instead of there being another clip and just a hole there, it's supposed to be a slider. The thing has got a slot on it, so it slides up and down. It's just too complicated for its own good. And so you can see this one don't have that, so it's not going to work. And the bad part about this is, and I don't fault the person that sent this to me, but I bought this thing, the second one, even though I explicitly explained what I was looking for and in detail, and explicitly explained what I was not looking for in detail, the person still sent me the wrong one. They sent me another one of these. It's the 71. The one I have to make this all work as is, doesn't have that slide thing on it. It's got a bar, this rod comes up, and then it has a threaded part on the rod, and then it's got a piece that screws onto that, and then it clips onto, that's wrong right there. It's supposed to have like a little ball fitting right there, and it's supposed to pop on there, and then, you know, that's it. That's the way it works. So whatever. So what I'm going to do is, in the sense that I'm not going to buy them, I'm not going to pay money for another one of these transmission linkage pieces, kick down rods, that somebody's going to send me the wrong one again. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go looking for the right link right there. I may have it in there, I'm not sure. I've got a piece on that engine out of that green car may work, but we're going to see if that one won't work. I'm going to have to ask somebody, and I'm going to have to spell it out, evidently, take pictures and drawings and things like that, so they know exactly what I mean and won't send me the wrong piece and all that, and try to get the right one for this to set this all up, because you can't drive it without this because it burned the transmission out. So anyway, enough yakking. I'm going to put you on the tripod here, and we're going to key this thing over. I hope we don't have an explosion or a fire or anything like that, and see if this thing's going to run. Put that new carburetor on it. I got a fire extinguisher over there too. That's my neighbors out there doing something. So let's see if I can get you a little closer. Maybe you won't have a glare from the sun. You want to see my fingernails? Cannot believe that. Let's get you a little closer. I'm trying to get you. There we go. Maybe that's a little better. This tripod acts like it's about to break. All right, you guys watch out for leaks and stuff. If this battery's low, we'll have to jump it. Ugh. Drips. Yep. think this engine has got distributor problems. I'm working on another one for it in the house, kind of a little side project. It just got a little bit of a, it's got a little bit of a shake in there. You notice it kind of runs a little weird at certain RPMs, mid-range like that when I rev it up. So runs better than it ever used to. It used to be, it was terrible. This car ran bad, man. But, I'm gonna check my temperature. Alright, I'm going to let it run a little while longer and make sure the coolant's up, popped up. Sounds pretty good. We'll do a little bit more tuning on this thing, but I'm just glad to have it back running and all that good stuff. So, righty then, from Moparville, thanks for watching, guys. Signing off. See ya. Well, did you guys know there was such a thing as a $150 battery cable? I didn't either until I bought a 66 Chrysler, which takes a specific battery cable, and turned out I had a bad one on it. I tried to make the old one work, but it would not work because, as it turned out, it was corroded internally and it was broken in two, so it would operate and start the engine about once every 20 or 30 times you tried it, so that wasn't going to work. So I made one out of a spare battery cable I had. We're talking about the positive cable, by the way, and it works, but it's nowhere near what's supposed to be there. Kind of a homemade thing. So, you know, we're kind of getting into the thing where if the rest of the car isn't so nice, you can't just, you know, do something like that. Alright, this is it. You ready? There it is. Positive battery cable for 1965 to 66 C-body big block. And all wrapped up and sealed up. We're going to cut it open so we can take it out and look at it. Maybe just it's taped here, I think. So I'll show you what the big deal is about this. I know there might be some folks saying, "Why don't you just go down to AutoZone and get you one of them to hang up on the shelf down there?" Well, you can't go down to AutoZone and get one to hang up on the shelf down there and use it. I'll show you. You could, but that's all right. I've already done, and it looks like ass. So anyway, they advertise these things and they brag about the fact that they've got this correct end on them, which I wasn't so worried about that. But the thing is, on these cables, it's hard to stretch the whole thing out, but this black cable, the small gauge wire that comes from the positive here, it goes down and it's wrapped up right there, and then you see it splits off to somewhere right there. This part does, and that somewhere is to the solenoid, which sits over on the left side of the firewall, the driver's side, and then also at the solenoid you have another wire which comes down like this, goes to the same place, and it's also, that's the wire that goes on down to the end down there that goes on the starter and the solenoid down there in the frame. You can see that right there. So that's the deal with this thing. It's got two wires, you know, sort of in tandem. So that's why it's, I guess that's why it's so expensive. I don't know who makes this cable for them, but it looks pretty nice. But, you know, again, it's one of those things where you just can't, you know, Are you going to fix up a car that's that nice and overall that nice and then cheap out on a battery cable? And also, I was at it, I ordered this guy, which is a washer bottle. This is a Mopar Authentic Restoration, and this is also again for 1965 to 66 C body. We're getting into a lot of stuff that's only for those 2 years, because 65 was they changed the body style in 65, and then somewhere up there, I don't know, something in 67 changed also. So there's enough changes in it that you couldn't, a lot of stuff doesn't swap over. So anyway, I have the original. This sits inside the fender on these up front, up on the driver's side, and then it's got the motor, electric motor for it is kind of adjacent to it down here, and all this hose and stuff. But it's a pretty nice piece. I got this out and looked at it a while ago. Just looks like the original, except brand new. Part 2497580. So got the hardware with it, all that. So it's the second washer bottle I bought in the last couple of weeks. I got one for the 68 Plymouth Valiant as well. And bad luck with washer bottles. So anyway, guys, thanks for looking at this. I thought I'd just tack this on to the end of this other video. And so we will see you on another one. Have a good one.